Some things die and then return, and some do not. That's one way to talk about it. The full moon returns each month. Flowers grow and flourish and die and return the following year. But the plate the potter made, it shatters on the floor and cannot be put back together. Some moments go from us, like shells dropped into dark water, never to return. And do we return or do we not? I'm Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast. Today we're going to explore the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a story that has something to say to us about what returns and what does not, and our place in that wild dance. Thank you for listening, and let us begin. Winter, and snow was falling down between the bare trees. The ground was covered in snow, and a cold wind blew. But in these cold days, there was somewhere a fire crackling in the banquet hall of a castle. And in this banquet hall were gathered a king and a queen, and all the lords and ladies of that realm. The food was ready. In the royal kitchen, there were platters filled with roast meat, chicken, all kinds of things, chicken and breads and cakes, potatoes, carrots, ale and honeyed wine, cakes and ale, all kinds of wonderful things. In the banquet hall, everyone was hungry. And it was at this moment that the king, whose name was Arthur, rose from his chair and began to speak. "Dear friends," he said, "we are gathered here on the shortest day of the year. This is our Yuletide feast. And on such a day as this, I declare that I will not eat until I see a great wonder, a marvel, something beyond our usual imaginings. Until I see such a thing as that, I will not eat food." And King Arthur sat down in his chair beside Guinevere. Now everyone was hungry. The plates were empty, the goblets were empty on the tables. Silence filled that room, just as hunger filled their bellies. And some clever person was about to say, "Your Majesty, simply all of us being here alive and well, that is a wonder." But before this person could speak, there came a shout from the gate of the castle. And then another shout, and then everyone heard the clip and the clop of horses' hooves on the stone floor of that castle. And then into that banquet hall, there came a green knight on a green horse. The knight was green from head to toe. His skin was green, his eyes were green, his clothes were green. He had a great battle axe strapped to his back, and he had a sprig of holly in his left hand, that green plant. His horse was green as well, from its hooves to its eyelashes. this knight rode to the center of the banquet hall. And he got off his horse, and he approached the royal table, where Arthur and Guinevere sat. And he placed that sprig of green holly on that table. And then he began to speak. Lords and ladies of this court, Arthur and his queen, I come to bring a challenge to this court. And my challenge is this. I seek someone, a challenger, to strike me a great blow with this axe. And at that, he took the great battle axe from his back and held it before everyone there. I seek someone to strike me a ferocious blow today, here in this banquet hall, and to agree to receive a blow from me in a year from this same axe. I will not defend myself today against this blow, and likewise, my challenger will agree not to defend himself in a year. Is there anyone here brave enough to accept this challenge? The Green Knight looked around the room. People began looking at the floor or examining the rings on their fingers. And then Arthur stood up. He cleared his throat as though he was about to speak. And at this point, Sir Gawain, one of the youngest of the knights, the most chivalrous, the flower of that court, Sir Gawain spoke up and he said, I accept this challenge. And he walked from his chair to the center of the banquet hall. And he faced the Green Knight. And the Green Knight said, good, Sir Gawain, yes. Here, strike me a blow, sir. And he handed him the battle axe. And then the Green Knight knelt down before Sir Gawain, and he bent his head before him, and with his hand he lifted up his hair to expose his green neck. And he said, Sir Gawain, strike me your fiercest blow, sir. And Sir Gawain took a deep breath, and he raised that axe high up into the air. And for a moment every candle in that room was reflected in the shine of that sharp metal blade. And then he brought it down, whistling through the air, and it cut cleanly the head of the Green Knight from his shoulders, and it nicked the floor, and there was a flash of light, and blood covered that floor, and the head of the Green Knight went rolling away under a table. And Sir Gawain took a step back. And then the headless body of the Green Knight stood up and walked to that table and reached down and fished around under that table and took hold of that green head and held it up by its hair in the center of that banquet hall, and the head began to speak. Sir Gawain, well done. I will see you in a year. But sir, said Sir Gawain, how am I to find you? Ask for the Green Knight of the Green Chapel. Everyone knows where I live. And with that, the Green Knight got on his horse, tucked his own head into the crook of his arm, turned that horse around, and then the Green Knight rode out of that banquet hall, out of that castle, and into the falling snow. And servants came and began to clean up the blood on the floor. And Sir Gawain leaned the axe against the wall. And King Arthur clapped his hands and said, Let us eat, dear friends, let us eat. And then the food was brought out from the royal kitchens. Big platters of food, and everyone ate, and they drank, and they sang and told stories, and they laughed until late in the night. And then everyone went to sleep. And the cold winter stars shone down upon the forest around them filled with snow as it was, and upon that castle. And the next day the sun rose. But now every day was a little bit longer than the last, for the winter solstice had been passed. And day by day, every day a little more light was put down into the world, and this light changed things which happened on the earth. Day by day the days changed. Winter began to lose its strength. Slowly, day by day, until finally spring attacked, and winter was lain down, and spring took its place on the throne of the year. And the bees buzzed amid the flowers, and the birds returned to the trees and sang in those trees. And the hearts of men and of women rejoiced. It was a happy, joyful time. And the days continued to get longer, day by day, more and more light pouring down like honey out of the sky from the sun. And then, in its turn, spring was killed by summer. Summer fought spring and succeeded in killing it, striking it down, so summer took its place on the throne of the year. Happy days in which the hay was growing in the field, and the apples were ripening on the branches, and every tree was a riot of green leaves that went whispering in the wild wind. And on these days still, Sir Gawain would be in that banquet hall, and now and then he would look down at the stone that had been nicked by the edge of that sharp blade when he had cut off the Green Knight's head. And he would remember that moment, and with a shudder he would think of his agreement to withstand a similar blow a year from that day. But it was summer. There was wine, there was poetry, there was music, there was the great flourishing of all things. These things were distractions, and he didn't think about that day too much. But in its turn, summer was killed by autumn. Autumn came and defeated summer in the battle and took its place on the throne of the year. And cold winds began to blow, and the leaves turned the colors of fire and fell down to the floor of the forest in crashings of red and orange and yellow. And now everything was ripe, and the honey was put into the jar, and the fruit was taken from the trees, the apples, the potatoes taken from the earth. It was harvest time. But as time went on, Gawain thought more and more about his agreement with the Green Knight. And as the days grew colder, it became harder to shake thoughts of that agreement. Until finally, on November 1st, the morning after All Souls' Night, Gawain awoke and he said to himself, "Today I must set out." And a little while later, he said those same words to King Arthur himself. "So you must," he said. "You must honor your pledge, your oath you have taken with the Green Knight. Blessings to you, Sir Gawain." And Sir Gawain went, and he put on his coat of chain mail, and he got his sword ready and all his armor, and his horse was made ready, and he took up his shield, a red shield with a gold 5-pointed star on the front. And the lords and ladies of that castle gave him their blessing. And out he went, away from that castle, into the autumn forest. And the leaves crashed and crackled beneath the hooves of his horse as he went through that forest. And he began to wander, for he was not sure where he should go. He asked everyone he came to about the Green Knight of the Green Chapel, but unfortunately no one seemed to know where this fellow lived. So he went from place to place, through swamps, up over hills, through forests of all kinds, in rocky wastelands. It said that he had many adventures, but he did not find the Green Chapel. And soon the cold winds got even colder. Soon snow began to fall. There was frost in the morning on all things. He was getting dejected. "How am I going to find this place?" he thought to himself. "I'll never get there. I will fail in my quest simply because I cannot find this Green Chapel. The world will never know that I was brave enough to go to that place because I can't find it." So, one day, in a disconsolate mood, he found himself wandering through a thick forest of oak trees, gigantic oak trees like none he had seen ever before. And as he went through that forest, a crow seemed to follow him, seemed to cackle and sneer at him from the branches of those trees, hopping from one tree to the next, flying, following him. But he thought nothing of it. And then up ahead, finally, he saw a palace. a beautiful palace made of stone and of timbers from huge oak trees. It was a palace of that place, of the very wild forest in which it was situated. And he went to the gate of this palace, and he knocked on the gate 3 times. And a man poked his head out from the top of the gate, and said, "Who goes there?" And Sir Gawain said, "It is I, Sir Gawain, a knight on a quest. I seek shelter for the night." "You may have that, sir, you may have that," said the man. And he came down, and the gate was opened, and 3 fellows came out and helped Gawain into the castle. And he was welcomed there by a large man with a big bushy beard. And this man said, "Greetings, Sir Gawain, greetings. I am Lord Bertram. Everyone calls me the King of the Forest. I live here in this palace. Be welcome here, sir. Come, dine with us." And he brought Gawain to a large banqueting hall. And there Gawain met Lord Bertram's wife, Lady Bertram, and there were many others there besides. And they sat down, and Gawain told his story to the lord and lady of that castle, how he was on a quest, how he was seeking the Green Chapel. And Lord Bertram said, "Sir Gawain, I know exactly where that place is. It's not far at all. In fact, I would say you could spend a few days here with us. Indeed, yes, rest up for a while. You've been doing some hard traveling. So I say rest up here, and in 3 or 4 days you can go off to that Green Chapel, and you'll get there in no time. How does that sound?" "That sounds lovely," said Sir Gawain. And they ate and drank some more, and then Lord Bertram had an idea. And he said, "Sir Gawain, I propose an agreement between us, and it will go this way. Because the thing is, I love to hunt. Yes, indeed, I love to be out there on a wild horse running through the forest. It makes my blood hum. Yes, indeed. So I'm going to hunt over the next several days here, and every day, at the end of my hunting, I will give to you everything I acquire in my day of hunting. And you, sir, you should remain here. You should rest up a while. Take it easy in this castle here. And at the end of your day, you will give to me everything you acquire from your days spent in relaxation and repose. What do you say to that?" And Gawain said, "That sounds like a lovely idea." "Wonderful," said Lord Bertram. "Wonderful. Let us do that." And they ate and they drank a little bit more, and then everyone went to sleep. And Gawain slept in a nice soft bed. He'd been sleeping in strange places in the forest, under bushes, on his horse, out there in the cold and the frost, but now a nice soft bed. It was a beautiful thing. So he slept very soundly. And the next morning Lord Bertram was up early, and he blew on a hunting horn 3 times, and he and 40 other hunters on horses left that castle and went out into the forest, driving their dogs before them. It was a riotous, fantastic hunt in the morning. They went out into that forest, and soon enough the dogs caught the smell of a doe. And the king of the forest said, "Gentlemen, today it would not be worthy of us to hunt the stags. No, we will let the stags go, but the does, we will hunt them. The females, we will strike them down. Let us go!" And so they went through the forest, following the smell of the does this way and that, and they headed the does up towards these high hills. But in those high hills there were beaters, men with sticks and with bells, who made a lot of noise and drove the does down into the river valleys. And there they were ambushed by Lord Bertram and his men. The arrows flew through the air. A doe jumped across a stream, attempting to get away, but an arrow caught her in the breast. The arrow sought her heart, and the light in her eyes died, and she crumpled, collapsing with a splash into that stream. Another doe bolted into the grasses, but an arrow found her there, and she too crumpled and died in the grasses. So it was carnage. The doe were killed left and right. Meanwhile, back at the castle, Sir Gawain had slept late. It was a fine morning. It was a lovely, soft bed. He lay in a beautiful room, a room with the colors of seashells in the walls and on the ceiling. He slept beautifully. And then he was awoken. And he was awoken by the sound of his door opening. And Lady Bertram came into that bedroom, closed the door behind her, and in a robin's egg blue gown she walked to Gawain's bed, and she sat on the edge of that bed, and she looked at him. Now he was awake, but he kept his eyes closed. He pretended to be asleep. He could feel the warmth of her hip against his right leg. And she waited, and he waited. And after a while he decided it would be best to pretend to wake up. So he pretended to stretch. He pretended to be surprised. Oh, Lady Bertram, good morning, good morning. How are you? I'm fine, Sir Gawain. I'm most excellent. How are you? I'm good, lady. I'm good. I slept well. Wonderful, she said. Wonderful. Sir Gawain, do you like music? Yes, I like music, yes. Do you prefer the music of one instrument or of several, Sir Gawain? Well, he said, I suppose I like them both about the same. Ah, she said. Well, as for me, I prefer the music of two instruments. Two instruments, that's a lovely sound, when they're both playing different melodies, that nevertheless wrap themselves around each other and mingle in such a sweet way, so that together they find the music of eternity itself, that sweetness that is at the heart of the apple and the plum and the peach. Do you like such music, Sir Gawain? Yes, I do like that music. Sir Gawain, would you like to make such music with me? My lady, music is lovely, but silence is also very lovely. Silence is really the mother of all sound and of music itself. I praise silence as well as sound, and right now perhaps silence is the best thing perhaps for me. Ah, she said. Ah. Well, perhaps you will let me at least break that silence with a morning kiss. I would not refuse you that, my lady. So she bent down and kissed his cheek. And then she stood up, and her gown whispered as she went to the door, and she opened that door, and with a twinkle in her eye for Gawain, she went out into the hallway and closed the door behind her. And Gawain got out of bed, put on his clothes, paced around a little bit, and then went out into the castle. And he did not see Lady Bertram at all for the rest of the day, for it was a very large castle. And meanwhile, out in the field, the king of the forest and his men, they were butchering the does there that they had killed, the female deer. They were killing them by the side of a river there. And they cut slits in the throats of these deer, and they reached in and hauled out the stomach, the intestines, all the guts of those animals. And the guts came out steaming in the winter air. And then they cut around the heads of the does, and they peeled the skin back from the bodies, and there was blood in the snow dripping down. And they took the intestines of the does, and they fried them up with blood and some breadcrumbs, and fed them to the dogs, who were quite happy to devour the innards of the deer. And then they took all the animals they had killed, all the does, and they took them with them back to the castle. And they arrived there just as the sun was going down. And they were welcomed by many servants who helped them with their horses and all their gear, and Sir Gawain was there as well. "Aha, Sir Gawain," said the king of the forest, "how are you? How was your day in my castle?" "It was very nice," he said, "very nice. How was your day hunting?" "Oh, we had a good day. We did. Yeah, look at all these does we killed. Yes, indeed, a lot of good meat there. But Sir Gawain, as our agreement, I have not forgotten our agreement, so all of this meat goes to you. And you, sir, what have you acquired in your day here in my castle?" And Sir Gawain looked him in the eyes, and then kissed him on the cheek. "That is what I have acquired," he said. "Aha! Excellent," he said, "excellent. Let us go feast." And so the king of the forest and Sir Gawain and Lady Bertram as well as many others, went to the banquet hall, and they enjoyed once again a wonderful feast in that hall. And they ate, and they drank, and they laughed, and they sang, and told stories till late in the night. And then they all went off to bed. And the stars shone down upon that palace in that forest of thick oak trees, and everyone slept, and everyone dreamed. And the next morning, the king of the forest, well, he was up early once again. He blew 3 blasts on his hunting horn, and he and 40 of his hunters on horseback left the gates of that castle and went out into the forest. And the dogs went yipping and snarling before them, and they smelled around them everything they could, and a dog's nose is amazing. With one sniff, a dog can inhale wisdom and knowledge about a whole square mile of forest. They can smell the mud and the lichen and the deer that died 10 years ago over there, and the bones of this and the stones of that, and so the dogs there, they smelled the scent of a boar. And they followed that scent this way and that. It was a labyrinth of smell through that forest, around here, down to the swamps near the river there. And finally they cornered that boar among some boulders at the base of a cliff, where some grasses were poking out of the snow. They cornered the boar there, and the men gathered around it, and the dogs as well. And then suddenly the boar bolted out of those stones and came straight for the dogs. And with its tusks it opened up one dog from the groin up to the head, and threw the dog aside. It was just shreds of meat. And it took another dog, and it bashed it against a boulder and crushed its skull. And then another dog tried to attack the boar, but the boar took its tusks, and it opened that dog up as well, from its groin all the way to its head, and threw it aside. And the arrows of the men went shooting at the boar, but the boar's skin was too tough. The arrows just glanced off, and the boar bolted off into the forest. And the king of the forest yelled, "After him! After him!" And off they went with a great galloping and barking of hounds off into that forest. And meanwhile Gawain had slept late once again, in that seashell-colored room. He was sleeping in a nice soft bed. And then, once again, he was awoken by the sound of the door opening, and the whisper of the skirts of Lady Bertram as she came in again, in a green gown, and sat on the edge of his bed. And this time immediately she bent down, and her breath was warm against his ear as she kissed his cheek. And she said, "Good morning, Sir Gawain," she said. Good morning, lady, good morning. How are you?" I'm fine," she said. "How are you?" "I'm doing very well," he said. "Sir Gawain," she said, "are you an educated man?" I suppose so. I've had to learn a lot of things to be a knight, you know." "Wonderful," she said. "Well, I would imagine that you are a person who knows a lot about love. For a knight must be compassionate and generous. Is that not true?" "It is true," he said. "Yeah, kind of." "Yes, indeed," she said. "So I think you know a great deal about love. And I wish to learn about love. I wish to be instructed in love. I desire that you teach me, Sir Gawain. Can you teach me a few things?" "My lady, I think perhaps you know more about love than I do." "Ah, Sir Gawain," she said, "I don't think so. For love is a school to which we must return over and over again. We learn with our hearts. We learn with our minds. We learn with the body, the sweet bodies we were given. So we must enter that school over and over again and learn from it. We must be taught by love, and every new person in our lives is a new education in the arts of love. So, sir, I wish to learn from you. Teach me, Sir Gawain." "My lady, I actually need to put some clothes on and eat some food. I'm kind of hungry, actually." "Ah, you're hungry," she said. Yes, I'm hungry," he said. "Well then, Sir Gawain, perhaps you will give me at least a goodbye kiss." "My lady, I'm not sure I could do that." "Well then, let me give you a goodbye kiss." "My lady, I would not refuse you that." So she bent down and she kissed Sir Gawain on the cheek. And then she stood up, and her dress whispered as she went to the door, opened that door, and went out into the hallway. And Sir Gawain got up, put on some clothes, and spent a relaxed, quiet day in that castle. And he did not see Lady Bertram all day long, for it was a large castle. And meanwhile, out in the field, once again, they'd cornered that boar in a cold hole at the edge of a river bank there, in the mud there, and the dogs were all ringed around it, and men with spears, and the king of the forest himself was advancing, wading through the cold water with his sword drawn towards that cold hole, where the boar lay wounded inside that hole. And all of a sudden, the boar bolted out and went straight for the king of the forest, but he was fast, and he took his sword, and he plunged it into the chest of that beast, and the sharp edge of that sword found the heart, and the life went from the boar, and his eyes dimmed and looked up at the sky, and the boar was killed. And he slumped aside, and the dogs went after that boar and dragged it to the shore, and the river was filled with the blood of that boar. And they began to butcher that boar. Immediately they cut a hole in the front of that boar, dragged out its intestines, which were steaming again in the cold winter air. And they took the head, they hacked off the head of that boar. There was blood in the snow there. They took the intestines and fed them to the dogs. And they cut along the spine of that boar and took the hide and put it on poles. And with a great shout of victory, they went back to the castle. And there they were welcomed by folks who helped them with their horses and with their weaponry, and there was the king of the forest, and there was Sir Gawain once again. "Ah, Sir Gawain," he said, "how was your day in my castle?" "It was very well," he said, "very well. How was your day out there in the forest?" "It went pretty well," he said, "pretty well. We didn't catch a lot of things, but we caught this boar. Look at this boar. He's a monster, isn't he? He led us for quite a space through this forest, but finally we got him down there in the swamps by the river. But Sir Gawain, as you know, we've made this agreement, so I give this boar to you. That is our agreement. And you, sir, what have you acquired in your day of rest and repose here in my castle?" And Sir Gawain looked at the king of the forest. He looked into his eyes, and then he kissed him on both cheeks, and he said, "That is what I have acquired, sir." "Baha!" said the king of the forest. "Excellent, excellent, Sir Gawain. Let us go. Let us have a feast." So they went off to the banquet hall, and Lady Bertram joined them, and there was much carousing and singing and telling of jokes and eating and drinking till late in the night. And then they all went off to bed, and the stars shone down upon that wintertime forest, and upon that castle in the heart of that forest, and all was peaceful. And in the morning, early, once again, the king of the forest got up. Off he went, and he found his hunting horn, and he blew 3 blasts on that hunting horn. And once again he and 40 of his hunters left the gates of that castle, and went rampaging through that forest with their dogs before them. And on this day the dogs smelled the scent of a fox. And they followed this fox this way and that way. It was once again a labyrinth of smell. They followed into the fields, around some stones here, into these trees. The fox was very tricky and clever, complicated to figure out where this fox was. He kept going this way and that. Where had he gone? So they followed all of these horses and the dogs, ranging all over the fields. For a moment they caught him. Oh, there's his tail, like a fire running through a field. There he went, and they followed him in hot pursuit, as meanwhile in the bedroom, the color of seashells, Gawain slept late. Yes, he slept late. It was a lovely thing to be in a soft bed. And he was awoken once again by the opening of his door. And Lady Bertram came in, dressed in a red dress, with jewels in her ears, and she came and she sat down on the edge of that bed. And she bent down, and she kissed Sir Gawain on the cheek. "Good morning, Sir Gawain," she said. "Good morning." Good morning, Lady Bertram. Good morning. How are you?" "I'm fine," she said. I'm excellent. How are you?" I'm very good," he said. I'm just fine." Sir Gawain," she said, "do you like to hunt?" "Oh, yes, I suppose I do. I like to hunt, sure. Doesn't everybody like to hunt?" "Well, yes," she said, "I like to hunt as well. But there are many joys in this world. There are many joys in this world, and hunting is one of them, to be sure. But it is also a joy to be hunted. Yes, that is a joy as well. And so, Sir Gawain, I would say what I like more than anything else is to be hunted. And Sir Gawain, let me speak plainly. The door to this bedroom is closed. My husband is off messing around in the forest. I wish to be hunted by you." Lady, sometimes peace is maintained by weapons, it's true, but sometimes it's also maintained by laying those weapons aside. And so I think right now, I think peace will be maintained in this place by my laying aside those weapons that one uses when hunting. That's what I think. "Ah," she said. "Ah. Well, perhaps at least you will allow me to give you a gift. Here, look at this ring." And she took a ring of red gold from her finger. "Would you like this ring, Sir Gawain?" "My lady, I cannot accept a ring, please. No, I cannot accept a ring from you, definitely not." "Ah," she said, and she put the ring back on her finger. "Well, then perhaps you would like this." And she reached down into her bosom, and she pulled out a scarf of green silk edged in gold. And she said, "Sir Gawain, this is a special magical scarf. It is said that whoever wears this scarf will be free from harm. The person who wears this scarf cannot be killed, so it is said. Can I give you this scarf? May I please give you this scarf as a gift from me to you to remember these sweet mornings that we have shared together in this quiet room?" And Sir Gawain thought about this, and he thought again of his agreement with the Green Knight. and how soon he would be facing a sharp steel blade. And he thought to himself, a magical scarf might be a good thing to have. And so he said, "My lady, I will accept your scarf." "Wonderful," she said. And she took that scarf, still warm from the heat of her belly where it had been wrapped around her body, and she wrapped it around his neck, and she kissed him on the lips. And she said, "Sir Gawain, this is a secret. Please don't tell anyone that you received this scarf from me. Especially do not tell my husband. This must remain our little secret." "I understand," said Sir Gawain. And then she said, "Good, Sir Gawain. Good morning again." And she kissed him on the cheek, and then she stood up. And then, with a twinkle in her eye, she went to the door, opened it, went out into the hall, and closed it behind her. And Sir Gawain stood up, he put his clothes on, and he went out into the castle. And he spent a lovely day of quiet and repose, taking it easy in that castle. And he didn't see Lady Bertram at all day, for it was a very large castle. And meanwhile, out in the wild, the king of the forest and his men had finally cornered that fox, and the arrows went flying through the air, and some of them found their mark, and that fox died. The heart inside it crumpled and died, and the light went from the fox's eyes, and they held that fox fur up in victory, and shook it at the sky and gave 3 cheers. And then they all went back to the castle. And there they were met by many servants who helped them with their horses and all their spears and weapons, and there was Sir Gawain. And the king of the forest saw him and said, "Sir Gawain, how are you, my friend? How are you? How was your day in the castle?" It went very well," he said. "Very well. How was your day out there in the wild?" "It went all right," he said. "I mean, we didn't catch much, it's true. Hardly anything, really. But this fox, and he gave us a good chase through the fields and the forest, but finally we got him. It was like solving a puzzle it was to get this guy, but finally we got him. A good skin on him, don't you think? Good fur there, good pelt on this animal." "Yes, indeed," said Sir Gawain. "And according to our agreement, Sir Gawain, I give this animal to you. This lovely fire-colored fox, I give it to you. And you, sir, what have you acquired in your day of rest and repose here in my castle?" And Sir Gawain looked him in the eyes, and then kissed him on both cheeks and on the lips. And he said, "That is what I have acquired, sir." "Aha!" said the king of the forest. "Wonderful, wonderful! Let us go feast." And Lady Bertram came out of the shadows and took his hand, and they all went to the banquet hall. And there was much singing and dancing and eating and telling of long jokes that seemed to have no end, but were very funny all the same, in that banquet hall. And they all had a good time, although it's true Sir Gawain was a little bothered, because, he knew soon he would be facing the Green Knight. Soon he had to find the Green Chapel. How was he going to find that place anyway? And would he survive? It seemed no one could survive. He was going to his death, basically. So these things weighed him down, and they peeked out inside his heart. They spoke in his heart in between the jokes and the laughter. He remembered that forbidding day, which he was coming to very soon. And he said as much to the king of the forest. And the king of the forest said, "Have no worries, Gawain, have no worries. Tomorrow, when you head out, I will send one of my servants with you. And this man knows exactly where the Green Chapel is. It's not far at all, and he will guide you there, and everything will be fine. You've got nothing to worry about, sir, nothing to worry about." "Well, we'll see," said Sir Gawain. But nevertheless, they ate and they drank till late in the night, and then everyone slept. But Gawain, well, he didn't sleep very well. He had bad dreams of that Green Knight with the huge axe on his back. So he was up early, up before the sun, in fact. And he got up, he put on his tunic, his coat of chainmail, he got all prepared to go out into the world. And the servant was there of the king of the forest, a man who came, and he had a horse as well. And he said, "Sir Gawain, good morning to you, sir. I know right where this place is. You have nothing to worry about." And Gawain took up his shield, a red shield with a gold 5-pointed star. And then the gates of that castle were opened, and off the two of them went into that forest. And there was a light snow drifting down through the branches of the oak trees, and there was snow on the ground as well, and there was a cold wind blowing, and a brilliant sun in the sky. And a crow seemed to cackle and sneer at Sir Gawain from a nearby tree. But then they went on ahead and left that crow behind. And it was true, the servant of the king of the forest, this man, he knew exactly where he was going. He guided Sir Gawain down out of that forest, across a river, through a swampy place there, this way and that way, and as he went, he talked. And he said to Sir Gawain, Sir Gawain, I must say, you're going to a place which is extremely dangerous. There's just a lot of bad stories about this place. People have been killed there. There's horrible stories about it. So I'm just saying that I think, if you decided to just leave and not keep this appointment, I would be fine with that. In fact, I wouldn't breathe a word of it to anyone. And I would not say you were a coward at all. I would say, in fact, that you are a very smart man. So that is what I would recommend. Thank you for your concern, said Sir Gawain, but I am a knight. I have made an agreement, and I will not break that agreement, even on pain of death. So I will go to this place. Well, it's good to know that, said the man. But I must tell you that I cannot follow you the whole way. No, because I don't want to set foot anywhere near this place, so I can guide you most of the way there, but then I must turn around. That's fine with me, said Sir Gawain. So they went this way and that, and finally they came to a ravine, a rocky ravine with icicles hanging from the rocks there, a dark and cold place. And the man said, Gawain, go down this ravine, and you will come to a valley. On the western side of this valley you will find the Green Chapel. That is the place you are seeking. Many blessings upon you, sir. And on you, said Sir Gawain. And then the man turned his horse around, and left that ravine and went off, back to the castle of the king of the forest. And Sir Gawain went down that ravine, a dark and a gloomy place, and his thoughts were no less dark and gloomy as well. And finally he came to that valley, which was covered in snow, and he looked for the Green Chapel, but he saw it nowhere. Nowhere at all did he see anything like a building. But then he looked on the western side after riding a little further, and he saw a big heap of boulders there, with an old stunted tree beside them. And he said to himself, Can that be the Green Chapel? This is not green, and it's like no chapel I've ever seen, but it's the only thing here. So he went to those stones and those boulders, and he tied his horse to a tree. There was a crow in that tree, cackling and sneering at him, and then it flew away. It seemed he was alone, his breath making clouds in the winter air. He walked around those boulders, a big heap of boulders, and it seemed there was a way in. There was sort of a door, a hole in between those boulders, and a sort of a cave in the midst of them. He walked around it a few times. Could this be the place? And then, just in desperation, he shouted out, I am here! Gawain is here! I have kept my agreement! I have come! And his voice echoed off the stones around and rang in the frosty air. But no one answered. He stopped and listened. He could hear the wind. He could hear snow sifting down upon other snow in that valley. And then he heard a new sound. Scritch, scritch. It was the sound of an axe being sharpened, and it was coming from inside the boulders there. Scritch, scritch. It was indeed an axe being sharpened. This must be the place, said Sir Gawain. It must. Scritch, scritch. And then, suddenly, the Green Knight himself came out of that hole. Aha, he said, Sir Gawain, you have come. Well done, sir. You have kept your agreement. Good to see you, sir. And you, sir, said Sir Gawain. All right, then. And the Green Knight, of course, was green, entirely green in his ears, green in his eyes, green in his bushy beard and his hair, and every thread of fabric on him was green as well. And he strode towards Sir Gawain, brandishing this large battle-axe, and he said, Sir, make yourself ready, prepare for the blow I am about to deliver. I am prepared, he said, I am prepared. And Sir Gawain knelt down in the snow before the Green Knight. And just as the Green Knight had done, he took his hand and he lifted up his hair, exposing his bare neck. Deliver your blow, said Sir Gawain, deliver your blow. All right, sir. Here we go. And the Green Knight lifted that axe up high into the sky, and then he brought it down whistling through the air. But as he did so, Sir Gawain flinched and tightened his shoulder and moved his head aside. And so the Green Knight moved the axe aside as well and said, Hey, sir, no flinching. No, you must be strong. You must be fearless. Are you a knight, in fact, or are you not? Yes, indeed, you must be strong, sir. I am sorry, said Sir Gawain. I will not flinch any more. Well, you better not. What kind of namby-pamby knight are you? And once again he lifted up that blade high up into the air, and then he brought it whistling down through the air, but this time he faked Sir Gawain out. He stopped that blade right before his neck. Baha, he said, just testing, just testing. Strike your blow, said Sir Gawain. I have been fearless. And it's true. Sir Gawain, for that blow, had been solid like stone, like a tree rooted in the ground by 100 roots. Strike your blow, Green Knight, sir. Strike it. I will, sir. Here we go. And the Green Knight lifted that axe up high into the air, and far off a crow cackled in a tree, and then he brought it down through the air, whistling down. But as he did so, with expert skill, he swerved that blade aside so that it just slashed the side of Sir Gawain's neck, and blood spurted out onto the snow. But Sir Gawain was not mortally wounded. His head was still attached to his body. And Sir Gawain leapt up and grabbed hold of his sword and his shield, and he said, Aha, sir! You have delivered your blow. We are done. The agreement has been honored. Sir, if you attempt to strike me again, I will strike you in return. Sir Gawain, said the Green Knight, be not angry. This was just a game between us. A simple game, that is all. You have done well, sir. You have been fearless, I can see that. And tell me, sir, how does that green scarf feel around your neck? My green scarf? Yes, how does that green scarf feel? The scarf you got from my wife. Your wife? Yes, indeed, sir. For I am Lord Bertram. I am the king of the forest, and I am the Green Knight. You, sir, stayed with me these last few days, so I know you well. And these 3 blows were given to you for those 3 days, and for what you acquired in those 3 days. So, each day you received a kiss from my wife, 2, and then 3 kisses. Finally you received this scarf, which you did not tell me about. And so your honor is stained, sir, and so I have nicked your neck there and given you a scar that you will remember for a long time. But still, sir, you have done well. Many another knight would have done far more than you did. You have shown fearlessness, and you have shown strength, inner strength. I salute you, sir. I give you my blessing. And I tell you this. It is a cold day out here, and it will be a cold night. If you'd like to spend the evening with me and my dear wife at our castle, you may do so. I'm sure she would love to see you once again. That's quite all right, said Sir Gawain. I'd like to go back to Arthur and my friends and let them know that I am well. Ah, you would, he said. Well, that's quite all right. But perhaps you can visit us another time. Well, perhaps, said Sir Gawain, perhaps. And then Sir Gawain got on his horse. And the Green Knight said, My blessings upon you, sir, and on the court of Arthur, and give my regards as well to Guinevere the Queen. I will, sir, I will. And many blessings on you and on your wife as well. Goodbye. And Gawain turned his horse around and rode off into the falling snow. And back at the castle of Arthur, well, it was time for another Yuletide feast, for it was indeed the shortest day of the year. And on this day, everyone was gathered once again in that banquet hall. Everyone a year older, perhaps a year wiser. And as before, the food was all ready. The royal kitchen was filled with heaps of delicious and magnificent food. But as before, Arthur rose before they ate, and he spoke, and he said, Dear friends, we are gathered here again for our Yuletide feast. And on this day I declare I will not eat until I have seen a great wonder. For this universe is crammed with marvels. And who would we be to accept a day without such a marvel appearing before us? My soul craves such a wonder and a marvel, and so I declare I will not eat until I see such a wonder. And Arthur sat down, and everyone waited. with silence in the air and hunger in their bellies, gazing at their empty plates and their empty goblets. Everyone waited. And they thought they would have to wait, possibly forever. But then, all of a sudden, there came a shout from the gate of the castle. And then another shout. And then everyone heard the clip and the clop of a horse's hooves on the stone floor of that castle. And a moment later, they heard someone get off that horse and walk towards the banquet hall. And then Sir Gawain himself walked into that banquet hall. And he was met by a great cheer. And he had a sprig of green holly in his left hand. And he walked to the center of that banquet hall and placed this sprig of holly on the table of Arthur and of Guinevere. "Sir Gawain," said Arthur, "what do you bring us today?" "Your Majesty," he said, "I bring you this sprig of holly from the wild forest, and I bring you the story of my adventure." "Wonderful," said King Arthur, "wonderful! Let us eat, dear friends, let us eat, for it is truly a wonder that Sir Gawain has returned to us alive and well. And so let us eat, drink, and be merry." And he clapped one time, and the food was brought out from the royal kitchens. And everyone ate, and they drank, and they sang, and they told stories till late in the night. And Sir Gawain told the story of his adventure to King Arthur and to Guinevere, and to many others besides. And after much more eating and drinking and the telling of long stories, everyone went off and went to bed. And the servants came, and they cleaned up that room, took the dishes into the kitchen. And then a boy went from table to table, snuffing out the candles that were burning there. And the smoke trickled up into the high air of that banquet hall. And he came to the table where King Arthur and Queen Guinevere had sat. And he saw the sprig of green holly in a glass there on that table. And for a moment, he thought that he should take that holly and toss it out with the kitchen scraps. But then he thought that it would be better simply to leave it there.